They have not written any chapter in the Constitution, just like Oyo. But they are governed by a strong convention. That convention is all in all of you, Yoruba, from birth, from childhood. You are taught those things that will make you Omoluabi, integrity. Every Yoruba person are taught right from the impressionable age those qualities and behavior that will make him to be able to stand on his own after the death of his parents. That's what saying Omoluabi integrity belong to Oyo to be in the capital. If he was in the capital of his capital, he will plan against their life. He must be outside. They are of 70 rank, 60 in the upper cadre, 54 in the lower cadre. Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò, ọ̀tún Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò, òsì Kakanfò, ẹ̀kẹrin, ẹ̀karùn, Balógun, òsì Balógun, ọ̀tún Balógun, ẹ̀rù, ọ̀tún ẹ̀rù, òsì ẹ̀rù, Báàgò, ọ̀tún Báàgò. You cannot declare war. You have ọ̀tún Balógun stay in the capital, òsì. Every morning up till now, some of them are older than my own mother, but they take pride. Palace every sector for about 50 compounds to tell you what they do there. Oyo Misi will come to the palace. Whatever has happened during the previous day, responsibility. The Alaafin does not carry government over his shoulders alone. We are sistered by people. Now, the other thing I want to, wherever I go, you give me some papers, you come back to me a week or 2 weeks after. Don't be surprised I quote you extensively, because God has given me that good and retentive memory. I'm talking about the source. Now, in the constitution of our nation now, this concern that is not indigenous to us in Nigeria is a borrowed one. I'm going to have a problem. You are a distinguished scholar. You can, in any part of the world, you can be of equal with anybody in the world. Now, you have our National Assembly. The president will set the budget to the National Assembly. The National Assembly will cut that budget and make budget of their own. You can never get that direct constitution, whether Republican or Democrat. You can't cross from Democrat to Republican. You can't cross from Republican to the Democrat. But you can see people crossing over. One day, this man will cross there. That is not a workable constitution. Anywhere you get that in the world, you have to have dysfunctional administration. Now, think of Afemi Awolowo, think of Nnamdi Azikiwe, think of Ahmadu Bello. They went to the Lancaster House in 1954. First of all, 1954, Nigeria was regionalized. Western region, Northern region, Eastern region. With power, we have our own national anthem, we have our own flag, we have our Agent General in the United Kingdom. The first Agent General Yoruba appointed, the Western region appointed was Toye Koka, and by extraction, Yoruba by extraction. He was a lawyer. See to the welfare of students from Western region. Where you stay, how you stay, any problem you have. Now, go anywhere, they did not attack Yoruba. That only Yoruba potential that tried to unite Yoruba one political was the Alaafin. Was the Yoruba Christian. In the 16th and 17th century, the 5 European powers met in one corner of Africa. They partitioned the African to the aspects of influence, not by war. Took Dami, took Benin Republic, took Togola, carved it out of Yoruba nation. That is Jews. Now I'm talking about Awolowo and Azikiwe. When they went to that house and they asked them, how do you want to cover Nigeria? Southerners said, west for Westerner, east for Easterner, and north for Northerner. That they are not, they have all got the personnel to run the type of government and Awolowo would advocate. I would say, if you are multilingual, multicultural, different culture, different history, different ways of life, different approach to life. When you are a Muslim is not only religion, it's a way of life. It's quite different from Yoruba. You may be a Muslim, you're a Christian, a Sango worshiper. We all interact in the same compound, in the same quarter. There's no fight. But have you ever found a Christian emir? You can't get it. But there are some Christians that say they have destroyed their artifact when their father do, and they are born again. How can you be born again? Lastly, what happened? How long carry the day? He then said, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic was being governed by force. They are not the same ethnic thing. And either in his lifetime or after him, that collapsed. And it has collapsed. You have Chechnya. Russia has not been to cover Chechnya. Czechoslovakia collapsed. You have Slovakia and Croatia collapsed. Romania collapsed. When you have people come, you are forced together by force of time. The best constitution for Nigerians should be federal system of government where no matter you are small, your state is small, you are equal to another. Now, I do some indices I've corrected. Start at Ibadan. Start from Royal College. Pass to Gate. Gate to Bere. Bere to Mapo Hall. Mapo to Salajabu. Salajabu. Down to the conference between Malete and to the roundabout to link with the express road. One day, the VAT that federal government collects a day is 750 million naira. That is what will be collected in a year. And all that money is going to federal post. That's just one street. All the streets in Gobe, in Jigawa, combined, the money that you buy use in buying in Lagos, buying cow, a day is 15 million. So 15 million are being shipped from Lagos to the north every day. So you see, you are spoken the truth. When a person is more educated, more intelligent, it will be difficult for you to, you see, to put him in a cocoon. Let me tell you, comes to talk about your name, talk about Alaafin, do this, fine. I've always asked them to let us go to debate. The Shire forbid. The age we are now is steadily moving from aristocracy of birth to aristocracy of intelligence. intellectual issue. Gentlemen, thank you.
In this long lecture, I want to bring two ideas. Mufeda Abamiji and the media, if you are here, do please just focus on my two ideas. And the first idea is what I call a new subfield that we should call Alaafinology. What did I say? Okay. And I will give you my reasons for you to think about it. We usually formulate concepts in the academy. And until you formulate that concept, your narratives will not work well. So by deploying this concept of kingship as Alaafinology, I am trying to propose that we should connect narrative to concepts, to theories, and connect the concept to systems of politics, institution of governance, and political philosophy. And in doing so, I am not limiting this concept to Oyo, but to a larger African setting, as well as the world beyond Africa that speaks to kingship. In this larger setting, the ingenuity of a system will receive substantial theoretical analysis in terms of its representation, justification, ideology, and relevance. In my approach, the African concept and ideologies of power may begin to receive an attention that they have not yet received. One advantage of such an approach is that this conversation can be built upon to move the contributions of Africa to a higher level of analysis, approximating what we call the universal. Indeed, narratives on Oyo, as well as other African kingdoms and empires, treat them as localities and peculiarities. My suggestion would treat them beyond that, with a further suggestion that theoretical ideas can be formulated around the Alaafin and other kings to talk about the constitution of political ideologies, ontologies of power, and the epistemologies around domination and subjectivity. Why am I making the proposal on Alaafinology? My reasons are that historical narratives, as rich as they can be, are not enough to create intellectual permanence, to organize memory, to build museums, to build ideologies, and to universalize knowledge. We have many essays on aspects of kingship, but labels and definitions are the tools of power, the tools of knowledge, and the means to spread ideas. A label is a shortcut to a library. It allows the creation of a subject, a field, a specialization, as in PhD in Alaafinology, which may be on a group of people not only among the Yoruba, but in other places. Disciplines have their roots in labels, as in history, literature, and sub-specializations within them. In a previous lecture, I've argued that if you had created ethology in the 1950s and 1960s, many universities would have been awarding degrees on it. Such a degree will have attained virtually everything that the humanities stand for, as in critical thinking and pedagogy. Labels have been created to understand institutions, processes, and places. For instance, we now use this alternate as a label to describe many kings in Muslim countries. We now use Egyptology to describe the study of ancient Egypt and its antiquities, and we label those who engage in it as Egyptologists. A highly specialized branch on language within Egyptology is known as demotic studies, and they refer to themselves as dermatologists. Studies on the fact will be labeled as ethology, while those who engage in it can be called ethologists to designate a highly dense and specific field. I'm arguing that we must create labels and define them, their meanings, methodology, and tools. Thus, I can say that Alaafinology means the following: kingship and the exercise of power, kingship and the civilized submission of culture, kingship and the collapse of kingdoms, the body of the king. We can then apply the meaning of Alaafinology to specific cases over time. For instance, the label can be a way to understand history, as in the study of the Pharaonic state. To talk about Alaafinology in whatever form kingship is defined is to speak to ideas about the centralization of power, the forms of government, the theory of power. Alaafinology can speak to the theory of checks and balances, but with moments of ruptures to the system and the move towards absolutism. Alaafinology can be used to understand land-based kingdoms. The Alaafin and Oyo illustrate the characteristics of land-based empires, in some ways different from the far more expansive sea-based empires with larger conception of global imperialism. Land-based empires emerged in China, in the Americas, Aztec in Mexico, Inca in Peru. How did they emerge? Who destroyed the kings? How did the fall of kings connect with the rule of outsiders? Alaafinology is about the ability to manage conflicts and wars. Conflicts were endemic to kingship. It was difficult to manage an extensive empire. The competition was tough in the past, and it's also tough in the present. Alaafinology is about the understanding of African power systems before the imposition of colonial rule. Power revolved around the king, his palace, the household, officials and retainers, and powerful chiefs and king groups. The strategies of kings to maintain dominance was never the same. Alaafinology is a label to understand the processes of state formation in different parts of the world. Sometimes state formation involved an access to mythology, to ideology of power, and the success in building a military. One final example is about issues around transition and death. The body of the king in death creates mysteries, and in some sense, a set of ideas on sacrifices. I expect you to challenge this idea. You're free to object to it, but the label is going to work, and I'm urging universities to try my label. That is my first suggestion. And my second suggestion is I'm trying to propose this afternoon the creation of kingship studies in Nigerian universities. What did I say? Kingship studies. I'm proposing that those of you who are vice chancellors and deans and on this, I will spend a little bit of time. Please stop talking. I'm making a major recommendation. Please, give us audience. Some of my friends are talking over there. Please, young women, stop. And young men, please. Okay. I want you to listen carefully to this suggestion. Kings gain their influence from the power of ideology, including the fact that they unite groups of people in common values through the flow of economic and cultural materials. This relationship exemplifies the potential for knowledge to create power. Through this, the epistemology of kinship provides critical analysis of general epistemological approaches. It gives perspectives to African epistemologies and their holistic nature. Kinships are, as a result, maintain true understandings of religion, science, and social relationships. They are supposed likely by the rule of mythology and tradition, ritual, and kinship. These are common ideas in understanding the fundamentals of African epistemologies. My arguments in creating kinship studies are as follows. To those of you who may be afraid, let me assure you that there's nothing to be afraid of. This also has very little with the ideas of whether kings are relevant to modern democracies or whether they are not relevant to modern democracies. But my proposal is about relevance of accumulated knowledge of the past and the need to classify the sources and methodologies of knowledge. Kinship studies will promote a multidisciplinary approach, drawing students of history, philosophy, anthropology, religious studies, and political science. It will bring together varied subjects which will shine light on the understanding of historical ideology and non-Western epistemologies. Contents, as a result, range from historical examples of kinships to theories on the development of civilizations and religions. Naturally, in Africa and across maintained sacred kinships, the extent of the sacred kinship cycles of power varies, depending on location. Even so, the cycle has yet to be entirely broken. It makes up a significant part of the history and even modern culture of the African people. Therefore, it is arguable that the youth of Africa should learn of the use of sacred kinship as well as its influence, even within the context of globalization, democracy, in the globalized world. And I'm not just making this recommendation, I'm also offering in this paper a tentative syllabus. Please stop talking, please. Let us respect Alaafin. For the professors who are here, I want to propose the following as the contents of my recommendation on kinship studies. Number one, we can discuss the use of mythology in creating and fostering an ideology and epistemology of our people. Without mythology, as we have observed, there will be no foundation for any kind of symbolic sacred kinship. For instance, teachers must review the various mythologies that either support or contradict the use of the sacred king by noting that any mythology must necessarily serve a certain purpose. The second component of the syllabus, concepts of indigenous governance in various societies, must be taught and understood as the first step to understanding the notion of ownership. Number three, after reviewing the various mythologies of ancient sacred kinship, students must be given a thorough history of how sacred kinship has been perceived and how it has evolved over time. Content number four, instructors must ensure that all theories on the significance of and purposes for sacred kinships are covered. While it is undoubted that there is a continuous cycle of renewal between ritualization and epistemology, the history of the proposed methods of kinship is important to understanding this. Number five, there must be an emphasis on the meaning of symbolism in culture, understanding of objects, where on the surface they look as physical entities, but they carry with them memories, emotions, and identities. Before students understand the use of symbolism in sacred kinship, they must first understand and appreciate the use of symbolism across history, and why symbolism resonates so much with cultures. In essence, symbols can communicate an unspoken language, one that is understood not verbally but emotionally between peoples who have similar struggles and experiences. Number 6, once the students understand the significance of symbolism generally, they must then examine how and why specific symbols like the crowns and beads are culturally significant, specifically to the Yoruba people or their own people. The instructors must inform the students that symbols, while powerful, convey an important message if the message is relevant to the intended audience. Number 7, students must study the various rituals found in sacred kinships across the African continent after they are presented with the knowledge on the history of symbolism and sacred kinship. Only then can students see the rituals with a new lens that allows them to hopefully grasp just how profoundly integral such rituals are to the continuance of an ideology, epistemology, and identity. Point number 8, students must leave the course with a conviction of the cycle of ritual. Without a true belief in this cycle, the student will have failed to understand how living mythologies have continued for hundreds of years. Number 9, one can teach about transitions of power in different historical formations and how the present takes elements from the past. Colonialism terminated the sovereignty of the kingdoms, but not their kingships. Not all modern kings are grounded in rituals, and many even have become Muslims and Pentecostalists. Subordinated to colonial and post-colonial authorities, previously land-based kingdoms were now part of an expansive sea-based imperial powers. The reason why I offer this syllabus is just for you not to say it is not doable. In other words, I made a proposal and I've designed a tentative syllabus for you. With such a course, as I'm proposing this afternoon, the students should be made to see how the concept of a sacred kingship is not primitive and unrelated to their own worldviews, but instead it is entirely compatible with them. Sacred kinship forms the backbone of their civilization, as well as a cultural identity of which they should be proud. Sacred kinship, with its ability to unify people and continue significant communal traditions, are representatives of the various facets that make us human beings, capable of understanding, creativity, and emotional communication. What are the advantages of my proposal? What are the advantages? Kingship studies will represent an opportunity to teach history over a long historical period. As long as 4,000 years ago, kings had existed in different parts of the world. Kingships are government systems interwoven with religion, philosophy, history, and culture. They are unique institutions that require multidisciplinary perspectives. Kingships utilize ideology to support institutions of power in unique ways. These ideologies rely on religious approaches. The study of kingship gives an integrative perspective to how diverse disciplines in humanities work together. Through an interdisciplinary approach, students can understand historical perspectives and non-Western epistemologies. Kingship studies will introduce students to a variety of topics through discussions of kingship. It will include examples of kingships and their historical patterns. This will include an introduction to philosophy with discussions of justifications of power. It will explore theories of religion, including anthropological theories about the religious origins of civilization. Kingship studies will also explore the sociology of kingdoms, including the formation of social hierarchies and theories of civilization. theories covered in kinship studies can be applied to literature, archaeological evidence, modern issues in international relations. Kinship studies can be further developed as a master's program with a well-developed curriculum. We can get a number of kings in Nigeria to give endowments and create fellowships for this. Objectives of kinship studies will be to educate students about political diversity, the epistemologies of power. At the end of the course, students should be able to use perspectives, taking skills to interpret primary documents, like the ones that Professor Oyeweso said they will start to collect. The fieldwork component will include the conduct of oral interviews with kings, chiefs, citizens, and people connected with specifics on governance. They should also be able to apply their knowledge of kinships to contemporary issues in international relations. Students should be more critical of their own approaches to justifying power. Silence, please. I will soon finish. Stop talking. Stop talking. With respect to the humanities in the universities, kinship studies achieve the same general ends as the study of great works in literature, any topic in history or religion, that is, in terms of the end goal of knowledge and the need to develop critical skills and thinking and impressive writing abilities. Kinship studies is an approach and method to build and practice analytical thinking, improve on the skills of written and verbal communications, and understand one's culture and the cultures of other people. Kinship studies will enable students to be inspired by the great minds of the past, while also learning to criticize foolish acts and behaviors and understanding power. In relation to the age when they live, students are able to evaluate the meaningless in the past and the meaningful in the present. As students engage on those meanings, they will be drawn into the intellectual, spiritual, and moral aspects of the complicated world where we live. Their wisdom of the past and present will deepen as they widen the sources of wisdom, learning not just about current ways, but how those in the past had dealt with obstacles, success and failures, adversities and triumphs. In the process, they will imbibe the spirit of empathy that humanities teach us. They will have clarity of values, comparing their own to those of others. To understand great kings of the past is to understand the complexities of politics. To understand King Mansa Musa is to understand the global order at his time and the reach of global finances. To understand the pharaohs and the pyramids is to understand ways of life and cultures centuries ago. To be at Ibadan and understand Shaka Zulu is to appreciate the cultures of the Zulu and how they think. To compare the Alaafin of Oyo with the Buganda of Uganda is to understand the interconnectedness of knowledge and how ideas which are treated as separate actually fit together. To understand the Shekeri Alaafin is to understand how creativity develops, how it is appreciated, how it is repackaged for the contemporary moment, and above all, how it is important for you and I to promote arts and culture. To understand King Solomon and his Psalms is to develop the habits of being human beings. To understand Caliph Bello is to ask questions about Islam and the world. To understand kings and wars is to engage in difficult intellectual arguments about cause and effects, to deal logically with human motivations, and to debate both sides of wars and their execution is to fully understand how knowledge is driven by complex stories and information, biased mythologies and imperfect data. For an understanding of dynastic rivalries and competition for the throne is to develop the ability to weigh evidence, to understand there is no one side of a question, no one